Yo, I couldn't help but do like a whole boxing deep dive. Sometimes I get locked into a certain sport, a certain aspect of a sport that's taking place, and I'll just dive in. Right? We just had the World Games, which was phenomenal. If you had a chance to watch, you had all these different guys playing. You had Finland with Laurie Markkinen and the young cat who's about to come in the draft next year, another 7-footer, real athletic, smooth athlete. You got Slovenia with Luka. You got Giannis. You got a Nikola Jokic. You got a whole bunch of dudes. Germany was balling out, right? And then you had boxing. You had the world of boxing. You had Canelo versus Bud Crawford, which was a phenomenal fight. If you haven't watched it on Netflix yet, definitely go watch it. And then you have coming up, you got Devin Haney and Brian Norman, which should be a hell of a fight. It should be a hell of a fight. But the more I started doing this deep dive, the more I started realizing that there was some really uncanny parallels between the NBA and boxing. And I want to dive into that in this video. If you enjoy the video, smash the like button for me. Hit subscribe and the bell for notification. It definitely helps out with the channel. And definitely I appreciate all the love and support. Remember, the like button is a small thing, but it's a big thing. So I appreciate it. Let me just start with this. I was watching this interview by Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. Boo Boo Andrade. And as I sat there and listened to the interview, he went pretty hard on Canelo, compared himself to Bud Crawford. And there was some truth to what he was saying. There was some truth to what he was saying. He said that Canelo's been cherry picking his fights and avoiding people who have that style. He just thought he could overpower Bud, and that's why he took the fight and, $150 million. But I started to think about who Demetrius Andrade reminded me of. And you know who came to mind? Was Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard. Both have kind of a goofy personality, right? Doesn't necessarily present in this kind of stereotypical fighter, ball player type of a manner that we were kind of accustomed to seeing from other athletes that came before them. They didn't show up how, let's say, ESPN wanted to. And certain narratives were created about who they were. Forget the fact that Dwight Howard was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, NBA finalist, Eastern Conference Playoffs Player of the Year, that he was a countless multiple-time All-Star and leading the league in blocks and rebounds and all this stuff. He was absolutely dominant. They just said he was goofy. Now he's not even in the top 75. Look at Demetrius Andrade, 2-division world champion. He was the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez at 154 pounds. Or was it 160? One of the two. Right? And yet, we just called him goofy. Or was it the media? I started thinking about Devin Haney. And I started thinking about Floyd Mayweather. And I started thinking about a lot of these athletes like Kyrie Irving, LaMelo and Lonzo Ball. And I started thinking about the parallels between Black athletes and their fathers and how they're often castigated in the media. And something started really making me think about the power of narrative. The power of narrative is tremendous. It's tremendous. Think about, I was watching the interview with Andre Ward and Roy Jones Jr. And they were talking about, after the fight, all the different takeaways from the fight. And one of the things that Andre Ward kept saying is he's not Canelo, that Terrence Crawford was the oldest overnight success in boxing history. Something like that. Something to that effect. That he's been in the game for so long. He's 37 years old, just turning 38 years old. I think it's either today or tomorrow, something like that. He's got a birthday. And all of a sudden now he's getting all the praise and the accolades. All of a sudden now he's getting all the praise and the accolades. But we've diminished him, overlooked him this whole time. But was it us or was it the narratives? Was it us or was it the narratives created by streaming media platforms, ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, all of them, who perpetually decided to promote certain athletes over others. I started thinking about Canelo and how he was handed the mantle. That's how they promoted it from Floyd Mayweather. They were like, Floyd passed the baton to Canelo Alvarez. And we ran with that theme. We saw his battles against Triple G, and we were like, man, this guy. But was it us or was it the narratives? Similarly, Luka Doncic comes into the league. Had a showing in the NBA Finals, Western Conference Finals. He's had some extremely big moments. And yet, we passed him the mantle. Was it us or was it media? And something that I would posit to each of us is, how do we differentiate between ideas or thoughts about life, about sports, about individuals, about ourselves, that has more to do with how we've been framed or they've been framed by what we see on a screen? Because some of these dudes, like I remember Terrence Bud Crawford against Gamboa. I remember Terrence Crawford against Victor Postal. I remember him climbing these ranks. I remember him taking these big fights, waiting to get his opportunity. I remember Boo Boo Andre, right, waiting for Canelo, right, calling him out. And Canelo didn't like how we called him out. So he decided, I'm not even going to face you. I'm not even going to fight you because I don't like your attitude, right? That's how they posed it. Think about UFC now with Dana White and uh, Turk Al-Sheikh, right? And how they frame the fight game now with boxing versus how it was during that time. Where because Canelo didn't like someone's attitude, he decided to skip them, even though he was his mandatory. Even though he was his mandatory. Think about Terrence Bud Crawford was supposed to get the fight against Manny Pacquiao. But instead, Manny Pacquiao was like, I'd actually rather face Spence. And then when Spence got hurt, who did he go to? He went to Ugas. Completely bypassed Terrence Bud Crawford. And we gave him a pass. We gave these guys passes because the narrative was like, they deserve a pass. They deserve the ability to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to fight him and I'm not going to fight him, even though that's the next man up. And yet somehow we still give him the mantle. We still excuse it and we say, like, he's the next guy up. He's at the top. It's something really interesting to think about how powerful these news outlets have been, which is why I'm kind of like, why I enjoy having my own channel that I could say what I want, say what I think. Was Boo Boo Andre, Demetrius Boo Boo Andre, correct when he said he was a Terrence Crawford before? Well, not before Terrence Crawford, but during that division, maybe what, 5, 6, 7 years ago? No, probably longer than that. Probably like 10 years ago, right? When he was at his height. And now you had all this A side, B side. He's with this promoter versus that promoter. And yet somehow Canelo got the pass. He got to skip over guys who were a threat, right? There was a time he could have fought Errol Spence. Errol could have moved up from 147 to 154 and fought Canelo, but Canelo decided, nope, I'm going to skip and I'm just going to move up, right? The narrative is powerful. The narrative is powerful. Luka Doncic being said that he's the next great one, but can't close it out. And with both situations between Canelo and Luka Doncic, we give passes for kind of skipping steps, for cheating, if we're honest, cheating the game. Luka couldn't get into shape. Canelo couldn't fight against a certain style. We saw Arislandi Lara. Right now, we look back at that Lara fight and said, like, even if Canelo did beat him, it was barely by a margin. If he barely could beat Lara, lost to Floyd, shoot, probably in that Trout fight, if they weren't calling out scores throughout the fight, which is like really weird, does Trout change up his style of fight and potentially beat Canelo? Right? Fighting the style that was working for him in the first half of the fight. These are things that we got to consider. We're giving Luka the mantle, but he doesn't play defense. He doesn't get into shape. And then we see other guys who do a phenomenal job of getting in shape, like Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. These other guys who are in great shape, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like Jaylen Brown, right? We could say all we want. We got so harped on Jaylen Brown's left hand that we completely forgot he's an amazing two-way player. He gets downhill, even in the playoffs, can carry a team through the Eastern Conference playoffs into the NBA Finals and bring home a trophy. The power of narrative is crazy. It's crazy. Now I'm still going to keep watching. I'm looking forward to this Devin Haney versus Brian Norman fight. Devin Haney looks confident. I think they see things in Brian Norman that they're like, he's not ready yet. And we are all itching to see, is Devin Haney ready? Because you got a big puncher in Brian Norman who's looking for his opportunity to really come up. If he beats Devin Haney, if he drops him, knocks him out, right? Brian Norman ascends. If Devin Haney beats Brian Norman convincingly, right? Fights his style, he's back. He's back. And watch how the narratives change. But I think something that I said before in the last video about Terrence Crawford is Terrence Crawford has reset the bar in terms of how we evaluate players in competition, how we evaluate these fighters in competition, right? SGA has done the same thing. Defense is important, right? Being able to stay in phenomenal shape is important, right? Having that leadership, having the mental, right? Terrence Bud Crawford, the mental, the fortitude to be overlooked and skipped over for a full career. If not for Errol Spence taking that chance, because we were about to excuse Errol Spence for not wanting to fight Bud. Saying, oh, it's too hard for him to drop down to 147. You know, he should just move up. And he would have gotten skipped over again. We would have missed this fight. These are things that we got to consider. Yeah, Luka's dope. Great player. Is he really better than Anthony Edwards? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? Guys who play defense? Nikola Jokic? Guys who get into great shape? Maximize what they can do on both ends? Right? Don't gas out. Can play these major minutes and still carry you when it matters the most. Right? These things matter. But you got to be careful of the narratives that surround these athletes because sometimes they're for other people's benefit. We can look back on, we recognize that boxing was building a cash cow. All right. We understand they were building a cash cow. Okay. Canelo Alvarez is going to make a lot of money for us. So we're going to lean his way, whether it's on scorecards, decisions, narratives, how he positions himself in the fight game. Luka Doncic being moved to the Lakers. I keep telling y'all that was not the Dallas Mavericks general manager's decision. Nico Harrison did not decide to trade Luka Doncic. The ownership of the Dallas Mavericks made that decision. That was way above his pay grade. But some of the narrative is going to have you blame him. Y'all can't wait for him to get fired. Y'all can't wait. Be careful of the narratives. Don't let these narratives dominate your ability to critically think. Because it may seem like it's just sports, but sports are also a reflection of our lives, our everyday life. What's valuable, what's not. All right. Who's the guy, who's not? Who's the person that we root for, vote for, think is good or not? And even how we even practice and train ourselves. Look at all these kids following Stephen Curry, think that they're going to be the next Steph shooting all these threes. Ain't none of them going to be ever be anywhere near as efficient. A lot of them need to focus on defense. All right. How do you know it was management? Because when you know the business of basketball, you recognize that how much money Luka Doncic is worth to the franchise is probably in the hundreds of millions. What he's worth to basketball in the NBA's objective to expand internationally. That decision that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not long-term, large-scale, billions of dollars in terms of advertisement and expanding the global game, right? This is a decision far above Nico Harrison's trading a 50, $60 million contract that they were going to have to re-sign for 75 plus $1 million a year, right? The decision between teams and competition is not the same as global scale advertisement and expansion of a business, a league, which is the NBA, and shifting to the Los Angeles Lakers to maximize a superstar's earning potential, not just for as an individual, not even just for the franchise, but for the NBA at large. That is not a decision Nico Harrison gets to make. When Shaq got traded from the Orlando Magic, that was because the ownership said there's no way you're worth this much money. The ownership said that. In all these situations, it's the ownership that says, hey, we don't want to invest in this guy. We're not willing to pay this money because of what they're worth to the organization. That's the power of someone who owns the team. We got to, if I'm honest, we got to start playing chess and not checkers. And that's just across the board with life. If you think it's just all about meritocracy and how hard you work, that's a big part of it. Hard work is what prepares you for the moment, allows you to take advantage of. That's what Bud Crawford did. But what we call politics, things that happen in the backdrop, right? Capitalism and the need to make money and sometimes the greed that gets in the way of competition and things that we love about sport, whether it's boxing, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, all sorts of sports. It's a reflection of our society. And a lot of times narratives are created in order to get us to kind of lean certain ways so that we can be okay with certain things happening, right? We didn't really get on Luka's top like that when he lost in the finals and got shut down by Jaylen Brown. I'm not saying shut down all the way, but he got embarrassed. Jaylen Brown was not supposed to be anywhere near on his level. And yet Jaylen Brown was ripping him at half court and was the best player in the NBA Final Series. That was never supposed to happen. But we don't really talk about that. We don't really get on that, right? These are things that we have to consider. These are things that we have to think about. So I love the NBA, love boxing. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button for me. Hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. It's your man 100 Grand Ross with The Rock Never Stops. I'm going to keep trying to bring videos that you guys might enjoy, that I enjoy. Because I like talking about things that are genuine for me, not just mainstream what everybody's talking about. So, hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to get at y'all next time. Have an amazing day. Remember, it's chess, not checkers. Have your own opinion. Be critical. And enjoy your life. Peace.